And so, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to that point where it's time for us to hear from our main speaker. And for many of us gathered in this auditorium, I'm sure our main speaker is no stranger to us. But it's absolutely important for me to set a basis for which, of course, he deserves this podium and to share his thoughts on our theme for this year's conference. Ladies and gentlemen, our main speaker is an investment banker and a global business strategist and development economist. He spent over 20 years with successful experience in providing fiscal, strategic, and operational leadership in very, very unique and challenging situations across different markets. Now, this speaker, ladies and gentlemen, has a strong track record as far as management, finance and economics, investment banking, factoring and forfeiting, of course, oil and gas, private pension management, and international trade. He comes truly qualified in his own right. He's got a double MSc and a double PhD. I'm not sure how many times I've come across that in my lifetime. So let me give clarity to that. He has first an MSc in economics and social science and a PhD in philosophy and social science, both from the Pan-African University of Science and Medicines, and he also has another MSc in economics and another PhD in finance from Universidad Esperida of Costa Rica. Ladies and gentlemen, celebrate him one more time. If you needed a platform to inspire young ones to the value of education and technical expertise, I believe this platform is that platform. Ladies and gentlemen, our main speaker for today, apologies. Ladies and gentlemen, our main speaker for today, as I'm sure you have realized, is absolutely qualified to deliver to us on our topic. Please help me to welcome the President of the African Investment Group, AIG, Dr. Sam Ankrah, to deliver his main presentation to us.
Good morning. I hope you're hearing me. The microphone working well? Oh, I need to take it up. Wow, that's going to be a lot of work. Mr. Chairman, President of the Institute of Chartered Economists, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished speakers, friends from the media, fellow students, ladies and gentlemen, may we observe a 1-minute silence simultaneously for all the people who have lost here at home and abroad over the last 2 years to coronavirus outbreak, and more recently, the late Professor Emmanuel Kwe Echampong of Korle Bu Teaching Hospital, the University of Ghana Medical School, a treasure and asset, and emeritus professor of surgery and visiting professor examiner across the world, his deaths of great loss to Africa and to the wider world. May their gentle souls find rest and perfect peace in the arms of our Lord Jesus Christ. Thank you. For the first 2 decades of the 20th century, ended with a global pandemic we now know or all call COVID-19. It started in Asia in 2019 and has shut down the world since early 2020, bringing the curtain of the 20th century or 20 years of the new millennium. Will this be a new century or an era that brings hope and opportunities? Or it's just a mixed bag of what everyone makes of it? And for that matter, each one for himself, God for us all. Or it's just business as usual? Hold your thoughts for a moment. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, may I respectfully request that if there's any Minister of State or high government official here to grace this occasion in our midst right now, may I respectfully request that you indicate by a show of hand so we can rightfully acknowledge your presence. As a professional body, the Institute sees government as a key partner and stakeholder in what we aspire to do and contribute to make our country great again. In that sense, we must foster a close bond of friendship and collaboration to help develop our nation together as one and not as enemies. Mr. Chairman, the last time I spoke at a public event close to this magnitude was when I was inducted as a fellow of this institute, a feat I cherished and hold so dearly to my heart. On that occasion, I chose to focus on the national budget and financial statement presented by the Honorable Finance Minister. I found it so timely and routine purely because what economists and finance analysts do. When there's a national budget, we read, we analyze, we critique, and put forward recommendations after dissecting it. And fortunately, I've granted interviews to some media houses prior to the presentation. To me, it was business as usual, where the incumbent sees you as an antagonist for unearthing weakness and threats in the national development agenda. This is because your subject of interest is the national budget, which is presented by the government representative responsible for managing the national economy. On the other hand, the opposition jumps on the back of pertinent issues raised, totally oblivious to the strength and opportunities identified in the budget simply to score political points. Because to them, incumbent can do nothing right in their eyes, regardless, or whether they have faced the same similar challenges with identical outcomes. But not this time, Mr. Chairman. This vicious cycle of dancing chairs must end somewhere. And if our economy is to become the engine of growth we so crave for, then the economist who must lead and not the other way around, not to be led. We must not compromise on quality. In other words, we must be intellectually honest. Quantity, never get tired of commenting, availing ourselves to be part of a solution of an economic problems, and certainly not take a back seat or implementation on restricting ourselves to the classrooms, radio stations, televisions, as well as newsprints and books. It's time for the economist to roll up our sleeves, to jump in the front line, and help execute policies that would bring relief to our people in Ghana and elsewhere in Africa. We are products of great professors, some of whom are in our midst, and we owe them a debt of gratitude for the great work they do. They sacrifice to make us who we are, and we must evolve and nurture a new breed of more productive and creative prodigies with a better chance of success to raise Ghana to where it belongs. Now we must redefine our economic models and create systems that speak to the African experience, resources, and opportunities. It must provide skills that enable strong tripartite relationship between academia, industry, and government. Can we rise to the occasion? The ball is in our court today. For the first time ever in my professional and academic experience, I'm going to challenge all of us to make a simple decision before we leave this event. To simply answer the question, can we rise up to the occasion? If it's yes, kindly leave your details behind, and I believe at the end of the speech, those of you who answer yes, we can, will fully understand our accomplishment here today. Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I must confess that initially, as flattering as this invitation was, I couldn't say for sure whether my schedule would allow me to be in Ghana and analysts or not. So I politely requested that I was given some time to think about it, whether to accept it or not. In our type of business, that is banking, finance, and investments, October, November is always critical for closing shop at the end of the year, and therefore is a period considered to be injury time for Christmas. However, it was not long before the topic began talking to me, especially the phrase, the word becoming flesh. It hit me like a thunderbolt whilst in conversation with myself. I got a hint of the lineup of speakers that I'm being asked to headline the event with, and that also sent shivers across my spine, and of course, butterflies in my stomach. I happen to know these great, accomplished personalities in their own right, some professionally and others from a much closer quarters. So don't ask me. This is when it dawned on me that the greatest economist of all times, in fact, the economist in chief, the creator of the universe, the Almighty God himself, is asking us to do something different this time around. And always, he picks the underdog, which is me. It was at this juncture that the invite made sense to me, and I gladly and boldly accepted to speak to this August gathering. I did so with a clear understanding that today's speech will require an audience far greater than those of us assembled here. Indeed, to speak to our dear nation Ghana and Mother Africa and to the world at large, announcing the African Renaissance. That this is a time, and it's long overdue, for Africa to rise up like the tiger economies of the Far East and China after the West has dominated global economies for decades. I hereby crave your indulgence to help me to congratulate the President, Professor Emeritus Peter Tufo-Esubontin, and his team for heeding to the call of the Maker and doing me such a great honor. To ask me to speak in this conference, being the first conference post-COVID era and the beginning of a new era, makes it more so special. I promise to deliver to the best of my human ability and be led by the Spirit of God. Mr. Chairman, in the press conference announcing this event, I was described as a world-renowned economist. So I said, if this means the whole world would hear of the work we're about to do here, and also means that we're ready, able, and willing to shift the economic paradigm of Ghana and the entire continent of Africa by pushing boundaries globally in order to champion the African Renaissance, then I'm in a great company. Please permit me to acknowledge all the speakers whom I have absolute respect for, not for their speeches today, of course, but more so for their contributions to the socio-economic advancement in this country, industry, and academia. Just in case you're wondering, or you are in the wrong gathering, and that the offering bowl will be passed around very soon, please don't. You are in the right place. You've not lost your way. You've come to the right place, and there will be no offering collected. For the purpose of this occasion, I have decided to cast the net as far back as the beginning of the institution of the Fourth Republic in 1992, giving a historical perspective of post-independence outlook of the country's economy, and to do a comparative analysis of the earlier trend with the current performance in the Fourth Republic era. Mr. Chairman, doing justice to a topic like this in time can be very tricky. However, I have learned long ago that paying attention to the instructions is a key determinant of success in any examination. So I do not intend to ask for more time. Dealing with our subject matter, restoring Ghana's economic stability and revitalization. The words restoring and becoming flesh suggests that we have had some successes in the past and somehow we lost it. But more importantly, there is hope with strong divine interest depicted by religious undertones, very assuring indeed. This assertion by the topic at hand is supported by a huge body of historical evidence from independence in 1957 to date. Mr. Chairman, the Ghanaian economy has seen an upward trend spanning 3 decades between the inception of the 92 Constitution, with which ushered the Fourth Republic, and this post-COVID era in 2021. Despite this upward movement, a number of challenges has bedeviled growth, redistribution of income, and sustainability. For example, in the year 2013, with an estimated population of 20.6 million, Ghana was ranked the 85th largest economy in the world, with a total GDP of 40.7 billion in 2012 figures. Per the population housing consensus in 2010, Ghana's population stood at 24.6 million, with an annual growth rate of 2.5 and per capita gross national income of $1,550, making the country the second largest economy in West Africa sub-region, only behind the Republic of Nigeria. With about 10.3 of the total GDP of the sub-region, the country's economic performance has been quite strong, at least on paper. Over the past 3 decades, during which Ghana pursued, number 1, market-led economic policies and programs with minimal involvement of government, recovery of the country's economy from recession in the early 80s on the back of economic reform and structural adjustment program, and the sustained growth since then earned the country a lot of commendations in terms of economic achievement. This prompted Lichov to describe the country's economy as a forerunner in the economic reform process. Ghana recorded 5.2 annual average growth between 1984 and 2010 and became a lower middle income after rebasing its national accounts in 2010 with a change in base year from 1993 to 2006. The rebasing pushed the country's annual average growth to 8.3% between 2007 and 2012. In 2011, the country commenced commercial production of oil. This development contributed 5.4 percentage points of oil GDP to the 15% real GDP growth in that year, with the country taking an enviable position as one of the 6 fastest growing economies in the world. So what happened? However, concerns have been raised about the quality of the economic growth, particularly in terms of employment, inequality, and general development in the livelihood of Ghanaians. Moreover, the growth figures over the years have not matched with improved livelihoods, raising doubts about the trickle-down effects of the growth. Besides, substantially of the growth was still in the issue that keeps lingering in the minds of policymakers. As Aite and all argued, the perceived lack of appreciation of Ghana's sustained growth performance might be linked to the fact that the measured growth figures has little meaning for the livelihood of Ghanaians. Number 1, employment generation trails economic growth, with jobs created in the informal sector where earnings are very, very low. Indeed, the labor market was still and is characterized by a high level of informal or vulnerable employment, coupled with high incidence of poverty, particularly in the rural areas and the upper and northern regions of the country in particular. The country continued to battle with the problem of maternal, infant, and child mortality, as well as high levels of malaria-related deaths, indicating the enormity of the challenge of achieving the health-related goals of the Millennium Development Goals 3, 4, and 5. Education was equally affected, with enrollment rates at the pre-tertiary level going up substantially without corresponding resources to make it successful and worthwhile for both state and citizens. The school system still faced problems of the lack of high caliber of teachers and teaching aides. At the same time, the higher education system continued to churn out a large army of unemployed graduates. With the entrance of the private universities, the focus shifted from science and technology education to the mass production of graduates, given a relatively low opportunity and the cost involved. The emphasis on certificates rather than skills and the high number of unregulated, poorly staffed, and shoddy fly-by-night higher degree awarding institutions in the various capitals has become a characteristic feature of the Ghanaian education system in the last few decades. As postulated earlier, my main aim here is to review the telling development of the Ghanaian economy by putting the searchlight on the key areas that should engage the attention of policymakers and relevant stakeholders, especially the general population, so as to exercise their franchise in a more responsible manner. I also intend to point out promising areas of future research for the attention of our research community. Microeconomic trends. So the term macroeconomic stability refers to a national economy that has managed to minimize its vulnerability to external shocks with a proof of practical increase in its prospects for sustained growth. In order to revitalize the national economy and safeguard its stability, the government must promote a budget with poverty reduction as its central theme, as well as committing relevant resources, human, technical, and financial. These must be disbursed timely into competent institutions, both public and private, to implement relevant and functional policies that would yield the desired results. Mr. Chairman, one major indicator of our country's macroeconomic performance is the real GDP growth. Ghana's growth record was quite erratic prior to the mid-1980s, when the country embarked on economic reform. From a reasonable high GDP growth of 6.2 in 1961, the economy of Ghana began to record a steady slowdown in GDP growth, reaching negative 3.0 in 1967, before recovering strongly at 6.4 in the following year. Growth remained stable for a short while and stumbled again in 72, with a growth rate of negative 2.5%. Indeed, growth was turbulent much of the period from in the mid-60s and only began to be sustainable or stabilized in 1984. The countries experienced sustained negative growth in 1967 and 1981. Instructively, most of the years of negative growth coincided with a period of intense political instability and external shocks. The first negative growth occurred a year after the military coup d'etat in 1966, while the period of 72, 79, 81 to 82 coincided with military interventions. The lowest prior to this period was a growth rate of negative 12.9, which was experienced in 1975 following a poor response to the oil price shock of 1973, as the economy could not access the international capital markets to find a bridging finance for domestic expenditures. Misguided economic policy in the form of inflationary financing and domestic borrowing was also to be blamed for the negative growth recorded in the 70s and early 80s. The serious drought experienced in the country in the early 80s and what economic historians point it in respect of the return of 1 million Ghanaians from Nigeria contributed to most of the shocks in the country's economy prior to the return to democratic rule in 1992. Revitalizing the national economy. This requires a national vision, a united continent at the cutting edge of global ascendancy, socially and economically. The statistics suggest that we have hardly made any progress over half a century and counting, if not retrogress, as in the case of some other African countries. Is Ghana one of these countries in real terms? We need to interrogate our own status further. If so, how have we sought to intend to maintain a stable economy? Traditionally and technically, we've pursued policies to promote stability with the usual textbook approach, such as fiscal stabilizers, foreign exchange rates, flexible labor markets, monetary policy, technology policy, human capital development, reducing red tape, deregulation, and providing incentives. Clearly, a commentary that purports to focus on one particular regime, administration, or political party will not do justice to the topic at hand. I hereby make these caveats so as to ensure that this important matter may not be subjected to the usual partisanship, which helps no one, but bound to leave us more divided, deprived, and delusioned. As economists, if we are to make any real impact in this new dispensation of Africa renewed energy for transformation, then we must uphold collectively and solemnly our shared values of honesty, transparency, and be accountable to the people we represent. Our technical commentaries and critiques must be constructive and not favor one party's administration or the other, unless it's supported by facts and figures. We have a greater responsibility to say and do the right thing or say nothing at all if it cannot contribute towards the development of sound and actionable policy interventions to lift our country and our people out of the vicious cycle of poverty. We are not politicians. If I need to remind us all, me included, and for that matter, this august institution of ours, ISIC, which I proudly hold a fellowship, must rise up to the occasion. Mr. Chairman, we have a huge responsibility to ensure that all our members at all levels are held accountable to a very high standard of professional excellence and good technical conduct. Ours is a call to duty, and realizing that we must begin and change the way we do things in order to get different results from what we have been getting up until now. It must be liberating, if not motivating and refreshing. Friends, this is what Ghana needs, and this is what Africa requires. I'm here to lay before you what I believe we need to do differently to change our fortunes as Ghanaians in Ghana, but more importantly, as Africans in Africa. If this is what the world must wake up on 1st December 2021 and recognize the work we collectively initiated, and then would have been a worthwhile experience. That this new path is being channeled through its economist, operating within the private sector with its distinct interests without any strings attached. This is a template we must promote and collaborate with all stakeholders to ensure that our expanded regions, the role of the economist must be decentralized enough to all regions with a vision to establish a sustained, vibrant local economic development initiatives. Ghana achieved major development results, progressing on economic and social fronts with the endorsement of the country's participation in the Millennium Challenge Fund, following completion of the demanding process of becoming one of the first African countries to access the fund. However, the 2008 global crisis revealed weakness in many countries across the world, including Ghana. The country's model was exposed, and this triggered a local recession. For example, remittance from Ghanaians resident abroad were hit significantly, undoing many of the previous economic and social achievements. By the year 2011, the public debt doubled and has ballooned to over 85%, and that's by 2020, and as unemployment reached over 30% of active labor force. The modest growth prospects, unless complemented with wide-range reforms will not be enough to undo the effects of the local recession, high debt dependency culture, and put Ghana back on the road to sustainable recovery. To support the government or successive governments with a reform and revitalization agenda, our community of economists and other technical minds must change our modus operandi by evolving a new non-partisan professional relationship with the economic managers of our national resources, a system where, regardless of one's political leanings, we will be involved in unearthing, analyzing, promoting, and executing policy options in the following interrelated areas. Number one, fostering productivity and competitiveness to create jobs. These are key to restoring macroeconomic stability, competitiveness, and inclusion. As a professional community, we must evolve and champion a new way of doing things. We must also provide policy and reform implementation options in areas where traditionally the World Bank and its affiliates often have experience in supporting countries with their own reform programs and personnel, thereby taking the job space. These are described in a series of more in-depth policy notes on individual areas in my upcoming publication based on a very inspiring topic, the word becoming flesh, which is to be launched in the first quarter of 2022. I encourage all of you here today to register your interest with my team and provide personal details for the advance order. This will help us allocate resources in the most efficient, effective, and economical way. Ghana's immediate economic challenge is to restore macroeconomic stability while promoting private sector productivity and competitiveness to create jobs and growth. Restoring macroeconomic stability will help provide a more stable basis for investments while freeing the private sector from constraints. This will help promote the productive capacity of private businesses, create avenues to absorb our large pool of human capital, and ease the burden of high rates of unemployment. Mr. Chairman, not as immediate, but as equally important is Ghana's projected population growth and the predominantly youthful population, but presents significant opportunities for growth and better living standards, as well as fiscal sustainability. Here, we must advocate policy responses that needs to focus on investing in raising skills and promoting healthy youth to prepare Ghanaians for a longer and more productive working lives, while modernizing, rationalizing the social protection and health systems for the new Ghana that our call for nation building promises. There is also a need to continue to upgrade public services, key institutions like the judiciary, and the governance of state-owned institutions and infrastructure to better support the needs of people and firms. Implementation of kinds of policies and reforms proposed on this platform under the auspices of the Institute of Chartered Economists Ghana can help the authorities lead the country back to the road of economic and social prosperity. This can only be possible and successful if politicians commit to working with academia and industry in a newly defined, technically minded tripartite relationship where role adequacy and ownership of responsibility becomes the collective mantra for all parties. I intend to shed more light on this initiative in the upcoming book. Here, what I'm saying is that there should be a new policy for legislation, if there's none currently, to actualize this such that it would generate non-partisan spirit to fill in the execution gaps in our quest for national development. After 63 years of independence and over half a century of abandoned colonization, why should Ghana, and Africa for that matter, to be dictated to what, when, how, and why we should feed and clothe and house our people in a way and manner the advisors themselves have never experienced? Writing the famous book, Why is Africa Poor?, Greg Mills daringly and authoritatively declares that poverty is now optional. If indeed it's true, and again, Nelson Mandela also said, poverty is man-made. If indeed this is true, then who is making those choices for all of us? He went on to propose what he believes to be the solution by adding to the title of the book, and what Africans can do about it. Very profound, you might think, but wait until you see what I have my suggestions in my book. Mr. Chairman, as economists, if what we do is not noble pursuit of providing leadership in finding solutions to our human problems, as to ensure that we live as fellow citizens with equal opportunities, rights, and meaningful coexistence, then we are but most miserable. If our work does not promote improvement in the social and economic lives to ensure that our people live successful lives, realize their full God-given potential, and contribute their quota to the advancement of the human family, then we are in the wrong business. Mr. Chairman, if I'm breaking with tradition and not presenting theory, it's because it's no more business as usual. It will be as dangerous or irresponsible for us not to change our ways of doing things in order to get different results. Our people expect us to do that. Our families expect us to do that. And we owe it to ourselves to do the right things. Mr. Chairman, in answering his own question, an answer for over 1 billion Africans, Greg Mills did not mince his words. The main reason why Africa's people are poor is because their leaders have made the choice. According to him, good development examples abound in East Asia, further afield in other parts of Asia and Central America. But then, Africa failed to realize its potential in half a century of independence. He believes Africa is poor, number one, not because the world has denied the continent the market and the financial means to compete. Far from it. It has not been because of aid per se, nor is Africa poverty solely a consequence of poor infrastructure or trade access, or because the necessary development and technical expertise are unavailable internationally. Mr. Chairman, he went to raise another question, which I pose to all of us today. Why then has the continent lagged behind our developing areas when people work hard and the continent is blessed with abundant natural resources? I quote, "Stomping across the continent and developing world in search of answers, Greg Mills controversially shows that the main reason why African people are poor is because their leaders have made this choice." So who are our leaders? Is it the political establishment in the countries or individual politicians? Are they working alone or with the complicity of others? And who are the others? Are they accountable, and to whom? These are questions that Ghana and Ghanaians, you and I, every African country and African, must begin to find answers before it's too late. Mr. Chairman, this is the reason why this year's conference ought to be different. My key message for our country and any other country to succeed in Africa or elsewhere, economists must provide leadership in charting a new economic paradigm, which will enable Africa to take its destiny to its own hands. China did it, Korea did it, South Korea did it, Malaysia did it, Singapore did it. The list goes on. Ghana must rise up and shine one more time. And my clarion call is to all today is that we must commit to understanding and embracing the new dynamics needed to move the country and Africa forward. Mr. Chairman, two great examples should inspire us to greater heights than our forefathers. Firstly is our departed father and brother, John Magufuli of Tanzania, who managed to overcome the national debt issue through effective domestic revenue mobilization, discipline, and effective leadership. And currently, President Paul Kagame, an example of a leader who has made a choice to develop his country and its people. This is the time for Ghana to once again show leadership on the continent stage by taking control of its economy and providing hope to its citizens. If we say we are waiting for the politicians alone to take the mantle and provide the technical leadership to solve our over 60-year of economic problem, we'll be waiting for another 60 years and there will be no solution in sight. This sounds harsh, but the odds are stacked against our politicians in Ghana. And knowing the situation in other countries, I can say that for majority of the Ghanaian politicians I've had the privilege of meeting and who represent our people in various constituencies, they do genuinely want to achieve meaningful results for their constituencies. Some also work very hard. Unfortunately, meaning and wanting to achieve is not enough to get the work done. And that's what accounts for the persistent failure to get the results on the ground. The domestic structures and even our constitution and processes actually help our political representatives and public office holders to fail once they are in the hot seat. We, the general population, also inadvertently contribute to the problem by being spectators instead of citizens. As economists, we have stayed on the fence for far too long, and I'm proposing a number of initiatives that would activate our huge potential to unlock the door to our socio-economic development before handing over the baton to the next generation. If we fail to seize this opportunity, posterity will judge us harshly. Mr. Chairman, the evidence shows that Ghana, like many African countries, can grow its economy and develop faster if we stand together with our political representatives as economists, accountants, built environment professionals, etc., to make sound decisions in the national interest instead of partisanship, personal, or party interest. Mr. Chairman, globalization has thrown an enormous amount of opportunities as we experience the best period in a long history for business in a borderless world market accessible to Africans. We're enjoying easy movement of people, capital, services, technology, goods. Emerging economies like us have unprecedented opportunities for growth and development. This is the time for Africa to clock, and the clock is ticking. It's been for over 2 decades, so it's now or ever. Gain socio-economic independence or be recolonized, by whom you may ask. What we need to do to revitalize the Ghanaian economy. Number 1 is fostering growth and competitiveness. Ghana is in a transition phase. We specialize in existing markets, but showing very little in growth in new products and markets. The contribution of old products in old markets to export growth in a higher than contribution of the old products in a new market. New products in old markets, and vitally, new products in new markets. Ghana's business environment remains a priority area for reform. In order to foster such development, it is key to tackle factors holding back entrepreneurship, including an unfriendly business environment, limited competition in product markets, lack of early-stage financing, and skills deficits. Strengthening public administration. Mr. Chairman, it's a common knowledge that a public sector wage bill is needlessly huge and not matched by productivity. This is clearly a drain on the national resources base, and if not checked, will continue to stifle growth and development. It is therefore necessary to reduce it significantly to a more sustainable level while delivering quality and modern services to the populace. This requires measures to improve efficiency and effectiveness of public institutions and build institutional capacity to manage and coordinate increasingly complex issues, particularly now that Ghana is reputed to be flying the beacon of hope for democracy in sub-Saharan Africa, and so desperately need to show socio-economic rewards from the political activities. Mr. Chairman, very important key decisions ought to be taken to protect the public purse, which has a direct correlation with the macroeconomic stability of the country. There is a need to review how functions are located across the public administration and identify measures to rationalize ministerial structures, agencies, regulators, and local government authorities. Implementation will require adoption of a firm commitment and a time-bound action, monitored by a central unit to provide an impetus for reform. Mr. Chairman, comparatively, Ghana continues to carry a large number of ministerial portfolios that can easily be halved and still get the job done. Human resources and management systems ought to be strengthened across the civil service by professionalizing public institutions, by introducing performance-based systems of recruitment, promotion, and discipline for civil servants, completing the harmonization of pay scales by ensuring the single spine salary regime is fully operational nationally. It is necessary to encourage and facilitate mobility across institutions, reducing the number of political appointees in central and local administrations and state-owned enterprises, and professionalizing leading positions in state administration bodies and professional services, including the management of majority of state-owned and public companies. Mr. Chairman, our managers of the economy must promote strategic planning and stronger performance orientation in public institutions through the strengthening of monitoring and evaluation and reporting systems. Building on an earlier digitization initiative and programs, there are more opportunities to offer some responsive services. Indeed, I will expand more into detail on the new ways by which the public sector can be reformed and provide value for money services and promote growth and stability in the economy. Tax policy and tax administration. Mr. Chairman, Ghana's tax system, as said earlier, raises less than 50% of the total revenue due, thereby making it difficult to enact basic public administration and budget fiscal management. A significant number of informal sector workers in Ghana are trapped in poverty as they do not earn enough to live themselves and find their families out of poverty. And it never has been a good policy anywhere in the world for policymakers to enact laws to tax poor people unfairly. The new e-tax has short-term benefits. However, the medium to long term, it would have a dire consequence on the economy. Apart from erasing all the efforts and hard work to cultivate a financial inclusive economic ecosystem and help in reducing the informal sector, it would also destroy most economic gains. The key area to be affected is a foreign remittance from Ghanaians resident abroad, as is the third highest foreign exchange earner after cocoa and gold. Taxing inward remittance flows is a bad idea, since remittances are usually sent to poor families of migrants. The tax will be borne ultimately by them, and therefore is likely to be highly regressive. A tax on remittance will raise cost of remittance in direct contravention to the G20 commitment and the Sustainable Development Goal of reducing remittance costs and increasing financial inclusion. Poor migrant workers tend to be highly sensitive in the cost of remittance. A tax on remittance would drive these flows to unregulated informal channels and will be there before. This is likely to reduce the tax revenue, increase the cost of tax administration, and encourage informal channels of money inflows. Estimates suggest that revenue raised from tax on remittance will be small relative to the revenue base of the country. For example, the IMF estimates that a remittance tax of 5% would result in a revenue of 4 billion, or 0.3% of the GDP of the GCC countries. Do the arithmetics. In the past, many developing countries have attempted to tax inward flows of remittance, but in the end, very few countries actually did. In the past, such taxes have not worked. In Gabon in 2008, in Palau in 2013, in the Philippines, in Vietnam, the list goes on. There are so many countries that have tried and failed. So instead of a lazy approach in implementing such a policy, why not dig deeper and address the following? Why not review corporate income tax? Why is the likes of MTN paying the same corporate income tax as Joe Block Spare Parts Enterprise in Abosokai? Why not digitize revenue mobilization and cap under declaration and contraband goods? Why is the likes of Coca-Cola and other breweries telling Ghana government they are producing the same bottles of Coke or other products they were producing 20 years ago? Why do importers import champagne and pay sparkling water taxes? Has anyone researched into amount of gold leaving our shores without necessary taxes being paid? What are the systems in place to curb these? Can someone advise why we are all singing songs about digitization, and yet the only system in place to curb corruption at our ports was scrapped a few weeks after implementation? Are we aware of how much money we lose in the ports on a daily basis? Why are we using banderoles, tax stamps, when most of the stickers can be copied because it's visible? Who is and was responsible for this? Whose idea is that in the 21st century? Who said real road toll collection is a meager amount quoted by the finance minister, when it's public information, courtesy of a certain member of parliament, that about 60% of the funds collected go into private pockets? This confirms most exercises conducted by researchers on the Tema motorway. By the way, who uses manpower and empty paper tickets as tool boats in the 21st century? Key actions to be taken. The following key actions ought to form part of any consideration to ensure we have a more robust, equitable, and modern tax system capable of raising the much-needed revenue to finance development projects. Introduce modern property taxation, generating up to 1.5% of GDP, while abolishing outdated local real estate-related taxes. In fact, if you do the mathematics, you understand. Eliminate a number of tax exemptions given to foreign companies and businesses. The saving alone, again, is about 1.5% of GDP. Shift the tax burden from the labor to indirect taxes to help support growth. Introduce tax policy and tax administration measures to incorporate shadow economy and strengthen and modernize tax administration to protect and expand the revenue base, including implementation of a modern compliance risk management. Strengthening public investment and reducing external borrowing. Strengthening public investment management, PIM, can improve growth, impact and efficiency of public infrastructure, and unlock more of the substantial committed resources from the various funding agencies of the World Bank, IMF, and others. External borrowing sources and means. Strengthen the PIM planning, contracting, and implementation capacity, along with improvement to the strategic planning and medium-term budgetary framework, should therefore be a key component of Ghana's growth reviving strategy. What are the key actions? We create a fiscal space to support the various streams of funding inflows, absorption through expenditure switching and substitution policies. We strengthen capital budgeting processes, including the link between investment planning and medium-term budgetary framework and between national priorities and regional priorities. We introduce a broader public investment management decree with a comprehensive set of underlying regulations and guidelines and a PIM information system to enable planning, selection, procurement, monitoring, and public investment projects. We strengthen individual and organizational PIM capacities, including project management capacity in line ministries and state enterprise and their governance arrangements, making a business-friendly Ghana. There have been a steady improvement in business environment in Ghana, no doubt, with copious amount of success in the digitization and the e-commerce championed by the private sector. The government needs to commit to full-scale digital economy reforms, which will see waste and corruption controlled, managed, and reduced significantly. Any microeconomic gains towards a sustained improvement must be matched by ending appetite for job creation. The political cycle that persists in this country and all democracies in Africa present manifestos that promises so much and deliver little has to be said. And to forestall this going forward, relevant policy and legislation must make it mandatory for a technical component devoid of political influence to ensure that execution is achieved by the benefit of the national economy and, more importantly, for our people. This is one of the key areas where we come in, invited or not. Despite earlier gains and the current initiative in the budget presented a couple of weeks ago. Mr. Chairman, inculcating an entrepreneurial culture in our youth is a must, but we should be able to point them to the corresponding support systems in place in terms of financing, technical and managerial support. Despite this vision and momentum to reform, Ghana still suffer from a number of shortcomings that entrepreneurs experience in the day-to-day running of their business operations. Ghana is part of a leading African nations, blessed with all natural resources, has access to a huge potential market for over 1 billion, but the main focus of economic activities is for export market, while importing most of our staple foods. It does not make sense. And therefore, as someone said recently, this nonsense must stop. Mr. Chairman, if we want to revitalize our economy at the national level, our focus must first be primary market, and therefore our vision and efforts must be Africa-wide. The key message: there is room for improvement, particularly in the area of land registry, business registration, resolving insolvencies, construction permits, and creating business incubation programs that work closely with the banks and other financial institutions support startups. We should incorporate a more consultative process with the private sector on existing barriers as well as while initiating reforms. This is where we come in as a third member of the tripartite think tank, is to ensure that the economic managers present a financial statement and economic policy to the nation. It would have merit and not shut down in political grounds, thereby erasing every confidence in the market. This technical or third consultative partner will not be limited to just economists, but all relevant technical fields, depending on what subject it is. Mr. Chairman, e-government will enable the public sector to play a more facilitative role in businesses and achieve value for money for all. Strengthen the rule of law and judicial efficiency. Mr. Chairman, despite progress in recent years, inefficiencies and unpredictability of the courts is one of the largest barriers to business investment and growth. Improving user trust and confidence in the court systems required further improvements in the quality and speed of judgment to signal change to the general public and businesses with reforms led by Ministry of Justice and Supreme Court of Ghana. What are the key actions? We should harness technology and intensify modernization and automation to increase the court's online services and boost two-way electronic exchange with both user and government systems. Modernization could utilize available structural funds for capital investments. Make reform an integral part of the new court network and reduce costs by consolidating management functions, finance, procurement, maintenance, statistics, etc. at the hubs in the network. We should equalize caseloads by transferring judges and other staff between courts with the heaviest workloads by transferring cases across courts, prioritizing reducing the case backlog with the targets and incentives at the court level. Intensify training for consolidated court registrars as key agents of change and harmonizing case laws through improved dialogue among heads of department and training of judges on new laws. We should gradually adjust the resource mix across the sector to raise productivity, reduce the number of judges and staff by attrition, and use savings to finance greater investments in infrastructure, ICT, and specialized roles that drive innovation and productivity. Creating a more subnational government. Decision-making, financing, and public service delivery are still highly centralized. Despite the legislative improvements, after the creation of additional 6 regions during the first term of the current administration, the degree of decentralization remains low. With the current unemployment level so high in the country, the increase in the number of regions should serve as an opportunity for job creation on the wider scale. Promoting a nationwide housing and regeneration program. Mr. Chairman, ineffective real estate registration is limiting Ghana's economic development, in part due to weakness in the current governance framework, which hinders the delivery of public services, increase the workload for courts, and undermine the development of a modern property tax. The effect of all this is highly predictable and certain. In most of the advanced economies, real estate registration agencies have been transformed through adoption of best practices and management within a single self-financed agency. Mr. Chairman, what we need right now as a nation, still grappling with a vision to cast inclusiveness net wider and improve the socioeconomic lives of the majority of our people, is to invest in the built environment, but without effective land administration and management, it will be an impossible task. Our real estate foundation is needed to pursue effective public sector housing. All over the world, housing investment is central to government, social, and economic interventions. However, Ghana has been bedeviled by a public sector that frowns upon technical expertise and lack of proper collaboration with the tertiary institutions. Means we currently import finance, technical expertise, and technology, and quite recently, management for all our major housing projects. This cannot be a serious country that wants to create jobs for its youth. It is not too late to revisit the First Republic social housing vision to spark the nation building that is so needed, not to just house our people, but to create sustainable jobs for lifetime. This should be an Africa-wide agenda that I believe Ghana should be ready to champion. The keynotes: create an independent real estate registration agency or revamp an existing entity and make it more dynamic to respond to the times. For this to be effective and efficient, there has to be a collaboration between the Lands Commission and the judiciary at the operational level, and with the digitization of the two outfits, there will be harmony and peace in land administration and management. Provide a self-financing business model for the agency to collect majority of income and registration fees and electronic services with the necessary safeguards. Implement a two-tier board system, a supervisory board of non-executive members appointed on the basis of their professional experience and competence by a non-partisan entity or authority, and management board of agency executives appointed by a responsible line minister. Addressing the energy affordability. Mr. Chairman, the energy sector reforms are well advanced globally, and from lessons learned internationally and elsewhere in Africa, addressing affordability concerns will always have in the heart of it a need to tackle and reduce high volume of defaults by government as well as private businesses, and finalize and design implementation of effective compensatory measures for vulnerable groups. Making this a top priority will go a long way to ensure success of this entire economy. In addition to the above is a highly decentralized system that is dependent on local resources with no accountability mechanism to ensure reforms are delivered, and lack of financial resources available for a compensation scheme. The economic impact of these leakages ought to be reversed if any gains are to be made on a national scale. Ghana needs to make a clear stand on renewable energy by creating a national pilot which will see public sector move away completely from consumption of fossil fuels to either solar or wind. The key messages will be tailored policy responses to help vulnerable households to cope with the energy price increase, to include reducing poor and vulnerable households with means-tested social assistance as part of the central social assistance, promoting energy efficiency investment, and that other efforts to help consumers manage energy demand for all income levels, communication and transparency to enhance consumers' acceptance of market liberalization. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, In a nutshell, I have agreed with the import of the topic under consideration this morning, and I believe that fraternity and any reasonable person will have to agree with all of us that indeed there is more room for improvement. However, if the expectation has been and was to see the normal conference speech that ends up in the shelves as many before we, then I apologize for disappointing those who grace this occasion for that reason. However, if it's the case that we economists and professional people can sing one's voice and send the numerous messages echoed in the presentation to all and sundry that business cannot be as usual, then we have accomplished our objective this morning. The evidence suggests we're sitting on a time bomb capable of obliterating all of us if steps are not taken to rectify them. Talking of youth and next generation, Mr. Chairman, I take this opportunity to announce that in the coming days, the AIG Foundation for Jobs will complete some formalities to commence various collaborations with ISEC and the stakeholders, including government, to extend programs to benefit unemployed graduates who declare themselves RAW, an acronym for Ready, Able, Willing to Work. Mr. Chairman, entrepreneurial spirit means one is willing to try whatever is available and committing in making work worthwhile. The vision of this initiative is to ensure that we raise, mentor, and equip young, energetic Ghanaians to serve as the foundation for our international decentralization program that will see every region strive towards local economic development. My team is ready to write down details of individuals willing to support in this program, and also ready to order the copy of the Word Becoming Flesh, stated to launch in the first quarter of 2020. Mr. Chairman, we can restore our macroeconomic stability, but only if we get the fundamentals in real terms. When the statistics can be evidenced on the ground and the people can testify to that, this is the test and challenge we must overcome. And for that matter, the word is not enough until it has become flesh and real people feel it. Otherwise, there would have been no need for Jesus to assume humanity before believing in him. For more, the copies of my book. Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we have what it takes as individuals, nation, and continent to effect necessary change to ensure that majority of our people are lifted from abject poverty and that generations to come can dream of a better future. I am excited about the prospects, and I think we should be, and Africa must stand with us to champion the new era of an African renaissance. God bless our homeland, Ghana. God bless you.